Insurrections have consequences. The president is impeached again, as Colorado's Republicans loudly defend him.
Glory to God.
And Colorado's Democrats urge some Republicans to condemn him.
Leadership is hard.
A Coloradan and Olympian is arrested, charged with storming the Capitol. The top federal law enforcement officer in our state says more Coloradans will be arrested soon. Hitting a COVID vaccine milestone, not as quickly as we'd hoped. An idea to change the way Colorado responds to mental health emergencies. And a word about some coming changes around here. Next. President Trump is the first president in American history to be impeached for inciting an insurrection. Coloradans played key roles in stoking the insurrectionist rhetoric and today played key roles in voting for and against impeachment. 10 Republicans in the House broke ranks to vote to impeach the president, none from Colorado. Ken Buck, Doug Lamborn, and Lauren Boebert all stood by President Trump today. Democrats Joe Neguse, Diane DeGette helped present the case for impeachment. They, along with Colorado Democrats Jason Crow and Ed Perlmutter, voted to impeach. More on all of their roles in just a moment. An Olympic gold medal swimmer from Colorado Springs now faces federal charges for participating in the storming of the Capitol. He was not hard to spot that day. 6'6" Cleet Keller was wearing his USA jacket with an Olympic patch while he was inside the Capitol. His teammates and coaches spotted him in videos posted online. The feds filed their case against Keller in Washington, D.C. today. So now we've talked about the fact that the FBI has warned every state in the nation about potentially violent protests at state capitol buildings leading up to Inauguration Day a week from today. We asked Jason Dunn, the U.S. Attorney for Colorado, what his office and his investigators are doing in response to the threat from right-wing extremism.
We are doing everything we can to make sure that that any peaceful protests go off safely here in Colorado. I think people have the right to do that, and they should be able to do that, and they should be able to do it peacefully. But they also should know we will not tolerate any destruction of property or harm to individuals or harm to law enforcement. And we will be aggressive about charging those criminal acts if necessary.
Conservative extremists in Colorado have been posting online in recent days, warning their followers not to show up to these Capitol protests armed, thinking that it could be a trap. It's illegal to openly carry a gun in the city of Denver. NBC News is now reporting that there are Democrats and Republicans in the U.S. House who have expressed concerns that Colorado's Republican Congresswoman Lauren Boebert is a threat to their physical safety. Boebert, of course, promised to carry her gun on Capitol Hill. Last night, she got into a standoff with Capitol Police. Reporters in the room said that Boebert tripped off the metal detector and then refused to allow the police officers to look inside her bag. Democrats today have been asking Capitol Police to investigate whether insurrectionists had been shown around inside the Capitol the day before the attempted coup. One Democratic member of Congress said specifically that it was a freshman member, somebody who had talked about carrying a gun in the Capitol, did not name the person. So I just straight up asked Boebert's office today if she had shown people around inside the Capitol on the day before the insurrection, and if so, who? Boebert's office did not respond. The start of Colorado's legislative session amidst a pandemic, that probably would have been our top story today, if not for the insurrection and subsequent impeachment. Republicans at our state capitol today broke with tradition to force a vote on the Speaker of the House. In every other year, the majority party just picks their leader. Democratic Representative Alec Garnett of Denver had the votes, obviously, to win the job.
You know, it's kind of fun to be the first speaker elected through roll call on the floor of this House. So let's look on the bright side.
Democrats control that state House 41-24. It's not close these days. Legislature's going to meet through Friday, and then they're going to take a month off. They say it's because of concerns due to the pandemic. Should point out that move is going to allow Democratic Governor Jared Polis to continue to wield increased power while they're not in session. Today in Congress, we heard Coloradans speak in defense of the president and others talking about the fear they felt when the pro-Trump mob stormed the Capitol. The impeachment vote and Colorado's votes. From our Marshall Zellinger.
Just 1 week ago, almost to the hour,
I stood in that gallery
I laid right there on the floor of the gallery
to defend this chamber against a violent mob called here by Donald Trump.
I heard gunshots in the speaker's lobby. I heard the mob pounding on the door.
Democratic Congresswoman Diana DeGette and Congressman Jason Crow used their experiences from last week to try to convince Republican members of Congress to vote to impeach, for a second time, President Trump.
Some of my Republican colleagues are afraid of the consequences of an impeachment vote. But this Congress sends our young men and women to war every day. I'm not asking you to storm the beaches of Normandy, but only show a fraction of the courage we ask of our troops every day.
I've heard that President Trump radicalized the group the rioters who stormed this Capitol, and I would say that we need to look no further than ourselves to find out what happened and to look at history.
In his opposition to impeachment, Congressman Ken Buck, the chairman of the Colorado Republican Party, did not make any additional reference to last week's insurrection. Instead, he name-checked Robert De Niro, Madonna, and Kathy Griffin as Hollywood socialists who have threatened the president without pushback.
And nothing was said by my colleagues at that point in time.
Republican Congresswoman Lauren Boebert, who made national news yesterday for refusing to have her bag checked at the new House metal detectors, used the strongest language from any Colorado lawmaker. Not about the siege on the Capitol, but about Democrats.
I call bullcrap when I hear the Democrats demanding unity. Sadly, they are only unified in hate.
And the other member of Colorado's delegation to speak, Democratic Congressman Joe Neguse, will serve as an impeachment manager, trying to convince the Senate to convict the president.
Encouraging, inciting a mob that stormed the United States Capitol for the sole purpose of stopping the constitutionally mandated counting of electoral votes cannot go unanswered by this body.
It did not go unanswered in that body. The House, Trump was impeached. Colorado's Democrats voted yes, Republicans no. What next? The Senate trial where DeGette and Neguse will be trial attorneys, essentially. But we know that Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell will not call the Senate back into session prior to January 19th, and Joe Biden becomes president January 20th, Kyle.
So, Marshall, so much has been made about the fact that 10 Republicans voted to impeach a president of their own party. Never has there been such a bipartisan vote on impeachment in American history. But I can't help but be struck that the president only lost 10 out of 211 Republicans when he stands accused of inciting an insurrection, a mob that took over the Capitol on live TV. That does not strike me as a great disincentive to the next president who is fond of some kind of insurrectionist mob. If you're only going to lose 10 out of 211.
You know, we call it bipartisan because at least one of the other party voted in favor. I was struck by one comment from a congressperson from Wisconsin. I didn't include it in the story because it wasn't relevant to Colorado. But he listed the things that the president said and said, obviously, it was hyperbole. Well, maybe not obviously after all. That representative voted against impeachment.
Hyperbole to everybody except for the people who went and did it. Yep. Marshall, thank you. We learned today, amidst all this business, that President Trump is moving U.S. Space Command out of Colorado, sending it down to Huntsville, Alabama. There are prominent Republicans in Colorado who lobbied hard to win Space Command, who held that up as a big win. I mean, former Senator Cory Gardner. The ones who are in office now are not pleased about what the Trump administration has done, especially because it looks even to Republicans like this was an effort to reward Alabama Republicans for standing by the president through the attempted coup at the Capitol.
Given the criteria that they gave us, I am deeply disappointed and very surprised that the Air Force would choose any other location. And frankly, my concern is that politics played a significant role in this result.
Elected Republicans in Colorado are now calling on the incoming Biden administration to examine the decision, as well as the president's role in it. Space Command is going to be staying in the Springs through 2026 either way, so plenty of time for it to be sorted out. We have now passed the 200,000 vaccination mark in Colorado, still not where we would want to be at this point. 3.6% of the state population has received the first dose of the COVID-19 vaccination, and that amounts to more than 209,000 people. The state vaccinated just under 10,000 people yesterday. We are currently creeping up at 0.2% per day, slow compared to what public health experts want to see. You got a sneak peek at the hospitalizations. There they are. They continue to drop. 814 people in the hospital currently, down 18 from yesterday, down almost 100 patients from last week. Let's look at positivity, shall we? Our positivity rate back below 7% for the first time in about a month. Yesterday's positivity rate was 6.5%, which is right about our weekly average. Your Word of Thanks microgiving campaign has delivered a lot of short-term emergency type help to neighbors across Colorado. I'd like us to think long-term this week as we support together a nonprofit that's working to create lasting success for families, the kind of success that can be passed down from generation to generation. The word of thanks that comes to mind when I think about the Jeffco Prosperity Partners is goals. They help families reach their personalized goals as they get out of poverty. If the family's goal to escape poverty is a better paying job, this nonprofit comes in with career counseling and tuition assistance. If the family's focus is on overcoming mental health challenges, they're there to walk side by side with them through that. If the family's hope is to buy a house, to provide stability, the start of a financial foundation that can be passed from generation to generation, that nonprofit's right there to guide them toward their goal. This nonprofit provides coaching and direct financial support to families below the poverty line in Jefferson County. They're keeping kids in school, making sure that families have everything they need to stay physically and mentally healthy, guiding them down paths in life to increase their income and their savings and decrease their reliance on government assistance. 6 of their families were able to buy houses this past year. That's really something. This is the kind of thing that can change the trajectory of generations of Coloradans, and we can help them expand their work to more families. Text thanks to 303-871-1491. I'll send you that link to donate. Same number every week. I'll match the first 50 of you who come through the door with $5. This is about helping families out of poverty into self-sufficiency by following their lead, listening to how they want to improve their lives. It's important work. It matters. So let's give them a boost this week. Coloradans having mental health crises keep ending up in the back of patrol cars.
That's not how we transport people who need care for a heart condition or a stroke.
There's an idea to treat those mental health emergencies less like crimes. It won't be cheap. We'll take a look next. We talked here quite a bit about the changing attitudes toward mental health support in Colorado, starting with the most basic idea that when someone is in crisis, treating them like a criminal does not help the situation. Arnusha Roy looks at a renewed effort to make a better approach more common.
When someone is having a heart attack or stroke and police are first to arrive, the patient is not supposed to be handcuffed and put in the back of a patrol car. And yet, when someone is in a mental health crisis and needs to be transported for health care.
Before I stood up this team, that we too transported people. When I told you about when we used to take people to the emergency room, that's how we transported people. We transported them handcuffed in the back of a police car.
Now the Summit County Sheriff's Department has the SMART program to respond to calls for mental health help.
The deputy, the case manager, and the clinician in a row and asked you to pick out which one was the deputy, you wouldn't know.
The program is a year old.
Case manager, along with our community partners, are able to stabilize the person
and connects them to resources in the community. And if someone does need to be transported, it's done in an unmarked car. But here's the caveat. The county has one team working 40 hours a week, and they can't get to all of the calls. And not every community has a team like this. So in those cases, it can mean when someone calls 911 in crisis, law enforcement can be the first ones to show up.
Secure transportation bill does is set up a structure so that communities can create an alternative model for transportation, which will be secure, safe, and health-based, so that people needing transportation to care will be transported in vehicles that don't mark them as criminals.
This could be for a variety of scenarios.
Even if they were to go in an ambulance, they would go restrained most of the time.
And would possibly work through partnerships with local clinics.
The transporting staff would be trained in managing health crises.
It isn't the first time this idea is being worked on. It was brought up last year too, but lawmakers say COVID and the domino economic fallout had different plans.
The big challenge is going to be everything that's happened in the last year and all of the competing needs for a finite amount of resources. The bill sponsors and the advocates, they said that they're still talking with stakeholders if anything needs to be changed. And Kyle, that includes keeping a close ear to what rural communities need in these kind of situations as well.
Yeah, without question, where finite gets even more I don't know how to change the verb or at that point the adjective. Thank you, Nisha. We're going to be making some changes around here. Nothing earth-shattering, but I guarantee it'll make some people mad, so just wanted you to be aware. Because clear communication prevents confusion. Like this. Next. So we're going to change things up a little bit around here starting tomorrow. Nothing major. I didn't want you to be surprised by it. So Next has been on the air for almost 4.5 years now, and figured that maybe it was time to freshen up the look and feel of things a little bit. Not the basement. The basement will remain untouched, although several of you have suggested that a new curtain might be a good idea. If you participated in our big Next family photo, sending in pictures with who you watch with, keep an eye out for those. This is your show, always has been, and tomorrow it's going to look and sound a little bit more like it.
60s in January, you bet. But usually when it's warm, it's ahead of a storm. And we've got a storm that's going to bring extreme wind as we move through the daytime hours on Thursday. High wind warning is posted as winds will increase out of the west. Those winds could blow from 40 to 60 miles per hour along the Front Range foothills and translate out onto the far eastern plains. This system will also bring a little bit of mountain snow. These advisories will continue until noon on Friday. And so as we move you through the Denver Metro forecast for tonight, expect that wind to really ramp up after midnight with the arrival of the cold front. Cooler weather tomorrow with the chance of a few snow showers coming in on Saturday afternoon.
It's a sign that this year's mango crop's looking a little funky. I don't know why we are also amused by the misplaced grocery signs here at Next. I think it's because you're so amused by them, like the King Soopers mangoes that really do look like avocados. I don't know if this got swapped with the avocado sign. If it did, some misguided millennials going to be making mango toast tomorrow morning. Send us the signs you see around town. Email next@9news.com or get attention on Twitter with the hashtag HeyNext. So there are families in our community struggling, living below the poverty line, but they have a clear vision of how they would like to get past that and prosper. And we are going to help a bunch of them do that next. There's a small nonprofit in Jefferson County that's helping families fight their way out of poverty and build a foundation for this generation and the next one. Jeffco Prosperity Partners works with each family to determine their goals and how they can get there, whether that's a better paying job, an advanced degree, a chance to buy a home. Their participants report that after the program, they're earning more money, they're relying less on government support. If you text THANKS to 303-871-1491, I'll send you that link to join me in donating. Their work works, and our support will help them expand to assist more families looking at a life beyond poverty. Bonnie writes in tonight to say, Kyle, do you believe that Trump's impeachment proceedings will likely cause more insurrection violence? If so, what's the difference between Nancy Pelosi inciting violence with the impeachment and what Trump did? Bonnie, this is not the first time that I have heard the argument that the president should not be impeached because it might make the insurrectionists more violent. You can decide for yourself whether you support impeachment or not, but think about that logic. By that logic, might as well just let the president continue in power for another 4 years. That's an abuser's logic. Stop making me mad and I'll stop hitting you. Not how it should work.